Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience, episode number 254. Subscribe to our mailing list to receive weekly updates and exclusive content delivered right to your inbox. Go to drfrancesrichards.com. That's drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. That's drfrancesrichards.com, drfrancesrichards.com to subscribe to our mailing list and be entered into our monthly drawing. We promise we won't spam you or sell your information. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black entrepreneur experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. A passionate philanthropist, marketer, and serial entrepreneur, Matthew Newman is the founder and CEO of the Brand Pillars, LLC, a seven-figure experimental marketing staffing agency laser-focused on giving clients complete access and control to highly trained and qualified personnel. Welcome, Matthew.
Good morning. Good morning.
I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
Yes, I'm excited to be here this morning. And just to respond to the introduction, I am Matthew Newman. I always like to say this because it's a very proud moment, a seven-figure serial entrepreneur. But one of the greatest values that I always say that I bring, that I contribute to my network and relationship is my commitment to community. And I live by this quote that has really elevated my level of success. And it says that if you stay true to the community will stay true to you. So outside of what you've already heard, that is what I would love for folks to really know about me, is that I'm true to my community.
What are you most grateful for right now in your life?
What I'm most grateful for is my health and my strength. As an old church saying we used to say before testimony service is that, yes, I'm grateful for my health and my strength. And here's something that I heard somebody say the other day that I actually utilized in two different interviews over the last 2 days. And the person said this, is that over these times or in these times, I'm mentally stressed, but physically well.
Who is your ideal customer?
My ideal customer are management agencies that produce experiential marketing events. So for example, if you are familiar with car shows, you're familiar with product specialists or brand ambassadors standing in front of cars, introducing the features and the benefits of a certain car. But what most people don't know is that behind the car is an agency that is essentially called upon by that parent company, whether that's Bentley, Aston Martin, Maserati, Tesla. They reach out to marketing agencies to produce experiential activations. So those are my ideal clients. Companies that produce experiential marketing activations.
You hear a lot of people in the marketing space, Matthew. How did you come up with this idea to go into that specific niche marketing industry?
Good question. Good question. It's nothing new. Let me say that. It's nothing new. I have had the opportunity just recently, I believe the date was February 8th, to have been featured in the Los Angeles Business Journal. And one of the primary questions that they asked, which was at the end of the interview, was what is your advice to anyone who's wanting to get into the industry, meaning the staffing industry? And the statement that I made, in paraphrase, I don't recall it verbatim, but essentially relationships are essential. I cannot tell you how important relationships are within experiential staffing. When I was just getting out of college, I lost my first job out of college. 9 months into my first job, I was let go. And so I began to question corporate again. And I was never the one to want to go into corporate, but I wanted to follow that traditional route, go to school, get a degree, get a good job. Got what I thought was a good job, but I got let go. So I had to resort back to this life of hustle mentality, entrepreneurial mentality. One of my best friends, actually my best friend, said, why don't you just go do what I was doing in college? They'll fly you out, they'll give you 3 or 4 cell phones, and you'll get to enjoy your life. And so I did just that. And so I started touring the nation with a gospel choir competition. that gospel choir competition many remember as How Sweet the Sound. And once I started getting out, once I got off of tour, I started working with other prominent brands, Lexus, Verizon again, Samsung, etc. And then once Samsung came up, the doors just flew open. I started working with a prominent PR company that was producing all of Samsung's experiential events, not only in the US, but also in France. So I would be sent out to train in New York in what's referred to as their experiential playground called Samsung 837. I would be sent to France to train 3 years in a row for a week straight for the Cannes Lions Festival. So I would have all of these opportunities and exposure to the clients directly. And it was because the agency put me in place with the client. I started being able to interact with all the celebrities that you could think of, Mary J. Blige, Kelly Rowland, Gary Clark Jr., all of these folks that I've had exposure to until one day, it was in New York, Brooklyn to be exact, a client, we were in a black car heading from the event space back to our hotel or to dinner or someplace. They said, Matthew, wait, you have been training for so many years. You've led our staff, you've led production, you've trained. Why don't you staff our events? You have a staffing company. And my question was, you're right. Why don't I staff? Samsung's hit me up. They made me a preferred vendor. I went through the entire procurement process. They came out, saw my offices, the whole nine. They gave me a chance. And they allowed me to staff a 13 market tour over the course of 4 months that not only elevated my life financially, but it elevated my exposure to other brands to show them what I was capable of doing as probably one of the only Black-owned staffing companies within experiential. And so I made a vow to myself and to the staff that I hired that one, they would never be considered a number, but that I would help to elevate their status and their position and their respect in the industry, which is why my company is called the Brand Pillars. Because if anybody ever wants to go to the website, thebrandpillars.com, at the top left of the website, you'll see the logo. The pillars in the logo, if you look in between the pillars, you'll see people. Above the people is the word brands. If the people fall or the pillars fall, the brand falls. The brand pillars. The staff are the pillars of every single brand. And that's been my vow, and that's how I've entered the industry.
Talk about your business and COVID-19 and how did you have to pivot?
Yeah. To make a long story short, my business was directly related to experiential activations, which means a gathering of a lot of people. And so we were hit. We were hit and we were affected greatly. My household was affected because you go from making a substantial amount of money to literally making $0 since February 28th of 2020. And if it wasn't for the PPP and the EIDL or the idle loan, personally and professionally, I wouldn't have made it. And so therefore, and we were blessed to have staffed one event at the tail end of 2020. We were doing incredibly well in that first quarter, very, very well, positioned to receive 44% of our profit and gross rev in quarter one alone. That's just how the business is set up. But because of COVID, we fell short, probably by 28 or so percent. With that being said, I had to begin to redirect my focus. And how I redirected my focus was focusing on my other streams of income. The Brand Pillars isn't my only business, but I had to become really keen on understanding how I can maximize the opportunities of my other streams of income in the pandemic while the Brand Pillars was at a standstill. And so I have a physical co-working space here in Inglewood, California, called All In Co-working of Inglewood. And so from that, I really wanted to find out how can I take the physical elements of a physical co-working space and apply that to a virtual space. And so I took a sheet of paper, and that sheet of paper was divided in half. And on the left side, it said online co-working. On the right side, it said virtual co-working. So I went home with my best friend. I called him, or I went home to call my best friend. And I said, brother, I think I got the next $1 billion idea. And so we said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take the likes of LinkedIn. We're going to take the professional networking side, the ability to communicate with others on the platform. We're going to figure out how we can stream videos, right? Record videos and have a video dashboard of just rolling content, things that not only inspire and motivate entrepreneurs, that really help them get down to the granular piece of whatever it is that they're doing so that they can come up during a pandemic. So we scratched the ladder idea and we founded the world's first Black-owned video conferencing platform, or in essence, we became the Black Zoom. So that's how we were able to pivot, was redirecting our focus on other streams of income. A quote that I've heard, I'm a man of quotes, a quote that I've heard long ago, it says that a wise man makes money more than one way.
Matthew, what can we do right now to support your businesses?
Great question. I love that question. I love that question. What you can do right now to support my business is visit www.thebrandpillars.com. That'll give you a phenomenal, simple overview of who we are and what it is that we do. The second thing is understanding who in the United States is producing experiential events in a safe way. That's that ideal referral for us. What brand, what agencies are producing experiential events in a safe way? Many people have resorted to drive-thrus. Some folks are still doing wine and spirit tastings in liquor stores. But who are those brands and how can we be connected with them? So if anyone listening or watching has the opportunity and or the network of brands who want to produce experiential activations. I had an electrical company connect with me. We're getting ready to do some business and understanding how do we reposition their brand in front of consumers so that consumers can see them in a different way, right? And so in essence, let me end by saying this, is that when you question like, oh, what is experiential? What's an ideal referral? Is who's the brand who wants to introduce their brand to the consumers or to the market in a new, fresh way? Who are those folks? If you can identify those folks, those are our clients.
There are so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or business that's dominating that you admire and why.
Easy question. Any tech company is dominating this space right now. One of the greatest is Zoom. I admire their growth, but here's what I don't desire. What I don't admire. What I don't admire is that more Blacks aren't supporting Blacks who are playing in the same space. And what I mean by that is that we have Zoom, who has done so incredibly well. From December 2019 until to date, they've had an increase of over 700% in the in the stock price of their company, which in turn relates to the value of their company, over 700%. And the pandemic has literally power rocketed the value and the recognition of their brand. But the good news is that now we have a Black company that's playing in the same space. I admire the growth because it gives us a case study to show us what's capable. So it's now time to introduce our product to the market.
Let's talk about business continuity. What is your highest risk as a business owner?
The highest risk of any business owner is losing money. Highest risk. When you talk about business continuity, one of the greatest pieces right now, we talk about the PPP, the EIDL or the EIDL, the CARES Act, and what that's been able to do for small and large businesses during this unprecedented time, or these crazy times. Let's just call it what it is, these crazy times. And it's important for all of us as business owners to understand that we run into a risk every single day. And the risk that we run into every single day is a possibility of losing money, whether that's losing money on bad decisions or losing money simply because of crazy times like a pandemic. It's important for every business owner to now, at this point, which is so crazy and so bananas, that we now have a very true case study that we can now plan for other major disasters like this, right? It's like at first we can wallow in it and say, oh man, we lost this, we lost that. But what a phenomenal case study that was forced upon us to help us to realize that we have to have a bulletproof and a pandemic business, right? The way that we've done business before no longer works. I gave this talk the other day. We've all read the book, Who Moved My Cheese? If you haven't, strongly recommend you read that book by Spencer Johnson. But one of the things that I said, I equated it to my own journey. And what I realized early on was that I lost focus too early, right? Not realizing the risk that was even a part of my business. Why? Because we always expected that we will be able to commune in person. We always expected that we will be able to go to a festival, Lollapalooza, Coachella, South by Southwest, ACL, governor's ball or gov ball in New York. We always expected this. We always thought that we can spray the town in Las Vegas and enjoy parties and conventions when it no longer happened, right? When the cheese that we once ate was no longer there. So the risk for me was at the point where the risk of myself or any business is losing money. The other risk is always assuming that the same cheese that you're comfortable eating off of can never disappear. When the cheese disappears, what do? And so what this has taught us, this case study has taught us that there's other cheese. There are other industries you can tap into. I can now staff COVID testing centers, right? There's other cheese you can eat off of. Whole Foods ain't the only place that sells cheese. Ralph sells it, Bond sells it, Superior sells it, Randall's, Kroger, Albertsons, they all sell cheese. So once Whole Foods stops selling cheese, just go to another store and buy cheese. In essence, identify industries that can also serve you. Recognize the risk, utilize this case study, bounce back, and get to work.
Matthew, I want you to have a monologue, and I want you to talk to the person in your life that has given you the most profound advice. So I want you to name that person and start your monologue. And what would you say?
Man, this is the crazy part. And I'll preface by saying this. It's crazy simply because there's so many people who have given so much profound advice. But one of the realest, and this is what I appreciate about my oldest brother. My oldest brother has tasted success. And so he's been able to give me some very raw brotherly advice. And what that advice was, is this is my oldest brother. His name is Donnie Newman Jr. He resides in Houston, Texas, Missouri City to be exact, our hometown. And what I would say to Donnie is simply thank you, because you gave me advice when I first started my yard care company that's still in existence to this day that I won't give up. And that yard care company is called my Lawn Mower or Social Yard Care. And the advice that you gave me was stop trying to make sure that your website is perfect. You're losing money every day you try to perfect your website. And that piece of advice pushed me in every level of my life. Why? Because Donnie, you were correct. It's value in getting started. And here's what someone else said to me. You get started and perfect it along the way. But what you told me, Donnie, was essentially that you're losing money. You're losing the opportunity to meet clients and build relationships simply because you're trying to get a website perfect. You're trying to outline a business plan because that's just traditionally what you're supposed to do. No, go get your money. So that was the most profound advice that I've ever gotten as a very young entrepreneur, is stop trying to perfect the website. You're wasting and losing money. That was it.
Talk to a younger Matthew. What advice would you give to a younger you?
Yeah, the younger Matthew, the younger me. What advice would I give? The advice that I would give is find a way to connect your passion to your profits, or in essence, find a way to socially impact those around you. And I believe you can do that. And I said this most recently, younger Matthew, is that if you're able to win and make money, absolutely. But if you don't assign a social impact, a way to add value to the lives of others, to benefit the community that surrounds you, and that you live in, the winnings will never sustain. My favorite orator, Matthew, as you know, is Zig Ziglar. And Zig Ziglar said that you can have everything in life you want if you help just enough other folks get what they want. And that very simple principle can be applied to every area of your life. And if you remember it and don't consider it as cliche, you will have sustainable wins. You will have legacy that's created for years and years and years and years to come.
Is there a social cause tied to your businesses?
Absolutely, for sure. And I'll focus on one specifically. There's two, but I'll focus on one specifically. And that's my nonprofit called For the Life of You. And For the Life of You is a mentoring foundation. And I live by this principle that's recycling mentorship. I was a part of a prominent global mentoring organization. But where I believe the organization falls short is that they don't teach the littles or the mentees the value of mentorship. They never apply an emphasis on ensuring that once the little graduates out of the organization, which is at the age of 18 or upon completion of high school, that they go back and start mentoring someone. That's how we recycle the mentorship process. And so for me and for the life of you, what we focus on are high school level students, specifically partnering freshman level students with junior level students. And as each progress a grade level, the junior will eventually advance out of high school, right? But that person who was once a freshman will then become a junior. So they go back and start mentoring a younger class, right? A younger classman versus an upperclassman, or a lower classman versus an upperclassman. And so you completely recycle mentorship. Junior level, freshman level, junior level, freshman level. When juniors become seniors, those freshmen become sophomores. When those seniors graduate, those sophomores become juniors. Now it's their time to go back and get somebody else, right? Eric Thomas said this. He said, imagine if Harriet Tubman would not have gone back and gotten, but she not only made it, but she went back and got somebody else. And I heard, we were at a meeting last night, and someone who's a phenomenal, prominent artist says something, music artist says something. She said, the problem is that we don't, as a Black community, we don't figure out how we vibe together. How do we work together? How can I work with you? And that's the same thing in mentorship, is that we have to figure out, how do we work with these young Black brothers? How do we work with these young Black women and get them to a point that they can now go back and teach somebody else what they've been taught? If we can implement that type of strategy in every area of our life. The young lady said another thing. We talk about Black churches and how Black churches are discipling disciples, right? Why don't we take the church outside of the church into the communities? What if we begin to vibe within the church and within the community? Hey, you need a plumber? I know a plumber. You need an electrician? I know an electrician. You need a business coach? I know a business coach. You need an accountant? I know an accountant, right? But keep it within that circle. Figure out, how do we work together? And that's the social cause. That's what For the Life of You is giving our underprivileged or underserved Black youth exposure to a different reality. That different reality is called life. And we do that by recycling mentorship.
Speaking of mentors, talk about your top 2 influencers and what lessons did they teach you?
My top 2 influencers, most likely no one will know. And the funny part is that one of them is my mentor who just passed away on the 26th of January, who is a white male in San Antonio, Texas, who's a veteran or who was a veteran. One of the things that he taught me was the value of observation. Rod was a man of very few words. However, what I truly respected and missed about the times that he and I spent together were the times when we were literally riding in the back of his home in his truck, picking up rocks from an old construction site and simply having conversations about life, maybe business, primarily life. And what we miss in influence is that we expect influence to be someone who's reached a certain level of success, who helps you to check off boxes. To me, that's not influence. That's not mentorship. But what Rod showed me was that mentorship was possible by simply riding in a truck and observing what he does, who he speaks with, and how he handles himself in various situations. The second person is my father. As cliche as it may sound, I've seen how my dad has responded to life and still maintained integrity, has still maintained character. The story I give in a chronological order, he lost his father, he lost his mother probably 3 years later, probably 5 to 8 months later, maybe 10 months, he lost his wife, who was my mom, December 14th of 2004. 3 to 4 months after that, he lost his brother to gun violence. In that phase, we lost a home. We lost 2 homes. We ended up living with his mother. We slept on the floor. His mother wanted my mom and us to go sleep in a shelter while my dad stayed there. We ended up buying our dream home, probably 2 to 4 years into our dream home, which is the same neighborhood in Missouri City, Texas that Beyonce lived in. We lost our dream home, not for financial reasons, but my mom was falling ill. She had what's referred to as sarcoidosis, a lung disorder. We ended up downsizing to a one-story home. My mom ended up passing. We moved into an apartment, my dad and I. I graduated high school in that apartment, but yet my dad still maintained character. He still maintained integrity, and he's still healthy. The greatest example of manhood. Those are the two people that have inspired me and influenced.
Thank you for sharing that, Matthew, and being so authentic, and our sincere sympathy for your loss.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Let's talk about legacy. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as a man who simply wanted to do good work with good people. Egos, leave them at the door. I don't care how much you've achieved beyond the clothes, behind the success, behind watches, behind cars, behind closed doors, you're still a person. And I simply want to be remembered as the guy who wanted to do good work with good people. That's it.
Matthew, what are you reading now and why?
I'm reading a book called The Post-Quarantine Church by Tom Rainer. The Post-Quarantine Church is this book here by Tom Rainer. And this book is essentially a guide to churches, I would say to churches, to thrive after the pandemic. Now that the pandemic has happened, what do? I have 4 books that are on my goals list this year, and they're in 4 different areas: theology, the life of Jesus, spiritual leadership, and a narrative. And this is essentially spiritual leadership. So this is why I'm reading this book. But most importantly, what I gather from this, not being a pastor or preacher, just someone who loves church, is that what Tom Rainer teaches is how do you repurpose a space that oftentimes sits idle for majority of the week. And that's one of my greatest takeaways so far in the book, besides prayer and getting back to the importance of prayer, etc., especially during this time. But what I've taken away is like, how do I repurpose my co-working space that oftentimes sits idle on Saturdays? And what Tom Rainer says is like, can you open that up to the community? Can it be a community center that's offered for free? And if it's offered for free, for example, a church, imagine the souls that will come to the church expecting something from God, right? Or wanting to give their lives over. For me to be in a for-profit space, imagine if I open up the space to the community for free, 1 Saturday out of the month, 2 Saturdays out of the month. Imagine the recognition that will come. And from there, members will come, right? The same principle. That's why I love John Maxwell so much, because he says, I can still take Christian principles and apply them in a secular world. That's why I'm studying Christian leadership in my master's. I graduated May 15th, can't wait. But I study Christian leadership so I can understand not how to beat somebody over the head with the Bible, but take those Christian principles and apply them to a business scope. The Post-Quarantine Church by Tom Rainer.
Matthew, the word is listening. What is that resounding sound or that message that your generation is saying that we should listen to?
I need more. The way in which I heard a pastor who streams out of my co-working space just recently, Sunday actually, he said that his dissertation in his PhD program, he said his dissertation is focused on how do you take the gospel and apply it to the current generation. Martin Luther says that if you're not preaching the gospel according to the times, you're not preaching the gospel. So what Pastor Rufus said was, it hit me because our youth are saying right now that we need more. This generation requires greater explanation. They require the why to instruction. And so what the youth are saying that the world needs to listen to is we need more. Show us a new way to apply old teachings so that we can be girded with truth, as the Bible says, right? That's what the youth are saying, is that we need more, but it's our duty to show how they can apply old truths to a new way of thinking.
What is the best decision you made as a leader?
One of the greatest decisions that I can think of, 2 come to mind, but I'll speak to one of them. One of the greatest decisions that I've made is protecting the prophet. I call this PTP, protect the prophet. And I teach this, it's simply saying that if you can create a business that does well, you take the profits and you create another business. And with that comes other opportunities, meaning other employees, other workers, etc. And so my ideal piece as a leader, as I was sharing earlier before we started recording, was how do I impact the world? How do I take Tupac's quote? I'm not saying I'm going to change the world, but I'm going to spark the brain of one who will. How do I impact my blueprint? And I impact my blueprint by creating additional opportunities. And I create those additional opportunities by being okay with failing along the way, knowing that I'm going to learn the most valuable lessons in my failure. So protecting the profit, taking profits to create another business. And with that is creating other opportunities and other jobs and chances and opportunities for people to glean from my failure and my wins.
Speaking of failures, talk about your worst moment in business and what was your takeaway?
Hire based on capability, not on relationship. Hire on capability and not on relationship. I'll say this, because I'm going to say this, actually, I'm going to be selfish with this, because this is actually going to be a teaching of mine in October, November on a series that I do called Everyday Entrepreneurship. But one of the greatest things I've learned as of recent is that when you hire, whoever you're hiring for whatever position, you should have a 60 to 90 day game plan as to what that person is going to work on for the next 60 to 90 days. If you can't create a 60 to 90 day plan for that employee, you should never, ever hire that employee. Many people, especially entrepreneurs, love to say they have assistants. They love to say they have staff. They have accountants. They have all these people that they love to hire, but they don't have a game plan. And so what happens is oftentimes those people are sitting idle, which does no justice for you or for that employee, because most likely your retention rate is going to drop because they're bored. They don't have anything to do. So the greatest lessons that I've learned that I'll only say for this specific piece is to hire on capability, not on relationship. But if you're looking to hire someone, have a 60 to 90 day game plan. If you don't have a 60 to 90 day game plan, do not hire that employee. That has probably been one of the greatest lessons besides company dynamics, internal dynamics with my employees, having to hire executive coaches, having a wellness plan, studying Dr. Brene Brown, like all that stuff. Besides all of those failures, the greatest one is hiring and hiring right.
Matthew, what problem exists in the world today that you would like to solve?
Problem that exists in the world today is a great gap between community and police. My pastor, Brian Carter, in Dallas, Texas, of the Concord Church, is at the forefront of racial reconciliation in the city of Dallas, someone who I admire greatly. So what I've done is, even through mentoring, is I began to recruit police as mentors so that children are beginning to see them in a different light. So that's why it's important for me, no matter where I am, to establish relationships with the police. If you can't beat them, join them, right? And so with that mentality is not only getting to have a great rapport with them in order to prevent them from, quote unquote, killing you, shooting you, arresting you, beating you, whatever. No, it's to really paint them in a positive light. And I believe that it takes an outsider to see on the inside of the importance of what the community is saying and what the police is saying. And we need somebody right in the middle who can see both sides and help bridge that gap. And I believe that's a phenomenal place to start with that every time you see a police car roll by, you have to look over your shoulder or be afraid, right? But also understanding the police side and saying, you know what? There are some crazy folks in the world. But number two is, they have a job to do. And that job to do is to police, provide good protection and good service for our community. But there needs to be a mutual understanding. And that's the only way that gap is going to shrink. So that's a problem that's in the world that I look to solve.
How do you feel about the person you have become?
I'm stoked. I'm surprised at myself at times. And the reason being is because I've taken so many risks, even risks that my wife has questioned. And when there's a taste of success or success comes, my best friend said something. He said, M. my nickname, years ago he said this. He says, sometimes the only response are results. Sometimes the only response to naysayers, the only response to those who, quote unquote, hate on you, throw shade on you, are results. You simply have to produce in order to show them that your thinking is actually factual. So I'm incredibly proud of the person that I've become. And as we say, the best is still yet to come. Our worst days are behind us, but our best days are yet to come.
Matthew, give us 3 truths in life or business.
Hire right, be vulnerable as a leader, and number 3 is be beyond reproach. Hire right, maintain vulnerability as a leader, and be beyond reproach.
What is a daily or a weekly habit that has given you the greatest success?
My wife gave me this, is scheduling my week. And as a principal, she believes in the calendar system. And I've always believed in my calendar system, but I never took time to plan the week out. With planning a week, here's something that I encourage everyone to do, is to put everyone on a calendar. I don't care who it is and what they do, just put everyone on a calendar. And what I mean by that is you have a calendar system that people know that if they want time with you, they have to go to this link and schedule time with you. And it puts great structure in your day, and it maintains accountability amongst those who watch you do what you do. Because a lot of friends and family have no clue what your day consists of, right? But you have a weekly or a daily habit of 1, scheduling your week, but number 2 is getting yourself in a habit of putting friends and family, I don't care who it is, friends and family on your calendar in a very structured way through a calendar system.
If someone wrote an autobiography about you, Matthew, what would the title be?
The title would be self-titled. I believe that it will be Matthew Newman, Catch on Fire. Mr. Catch on Fire. That's not only my Instagram handle, but that's what I literally live by. I used to have this on something. I don't know if it was on Instagram or Twitter, but it said that whether you stand near me, hear me, or see me, it's guaranteed that you'll catch on fire. And that catch on fire comes from the prophet Jeremiah in biblical scripture. And I'll give this story very briefly, is that the prophet Jeremiah, for those listening, is known as the weeping prophet. He was known as the weeping prophet because while he was in his mother's womb, his mom would weep from carrying him. So Jeremiah already had a destined path, but it wasn't until he started growing up, until God started giving him certain responsibilities to go to people who weren't obliging to the voice of God. So the responsibility that God gave Jeremiah was for Jeremiah to go tell those people, if you don't stop what you're doing, if you don't heed to the word of God, you're going to find yourself in some pain. You're going to find yourself experiencing the wrath of God. But these people shunned Jeremiah. They laughed at him. They chuckled at him. They were like, what do you mean? Who are you? Get away from us. We're not listening to what you said. So Jeremiah went back to the God that sent him to those people. He says, look, you're the one who sent me, yet you aren't protecting me from their wrath. Crazy. You sent me to protect them from your wrath, yet you're not protecting me from their wrath. That's a new concept that I just came up with. That's crazy. God sent Jeremiah to protect them from God's wrath, yet God didn't protect him from their wrath. That's powerful. But Jeremiah said something. He said that, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stop speaking your name. Yep, I'm going to stop doing it. If you're not going to help me, God, I'm going to stop speaking your name. But what Jeremiah found was that he couldn't shut up because he still knew of the goodness of God. He still knew of it. So he says, you know what? When I tried to shut up, it consumed me. The goodness of God consumed me. And here's the key verse. It's like fire shut up in my bones. So I equate that to a chimney. A chimney has to have a vent so that it can ventilate. Because if the smoke consumes the chimney, the fire will come out. Come on, somebody. So the same exact piece is that the passion that I have for life, for encouraging people to show them that they can have a greater path in life, is like the fire that was shut up in Jeremiah's bone. That's the autobiography title. Matthew Newman, Mr. Catch on Fire.
That was some good preaching there, Matthew.
That's, man, the prophet Jeremiah. People don't know what that dude experienced. That's it.
Matthew, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I want you to ask the question and answer it.
The one question that I would have asked myself was, what keeps you grounded? What keeps you grounded? And the thing that keeps me grounded every single day is the knowing that there's someone who's secretly watching me. And there's someone who is depending on me to triumph in and over every situation in order for them to have the courage to triumph in and over every situation or circumstance. That's the one question that I would have asked myself, is what keeps you grounded? And what keeps me grounded, again, is the knowing that there's someone who is secretly watching me.
Let's talk about self-care. What does self-care look like to Matthew?
Self-care is normalizing rest. Being okay, my wife and I put this on our manifestation board this year, is resting and being okay with resting. That's what self-care looks like to me.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Fun Facts Lightning Round. I'm going to ask you a series of questions and I want you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Fun Facts Lightning Round?
Let's do it.
The last movie you saw?
American Skin.
Your first job?
Drumming at a church or working at a grocery store, both at almost the same exact time.
Your favorite color?
Blue.
You relax doing what?
Playing golf.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Alicia Keys and Leanne La Havas.
Your favorite dance song?
Ooh, I don't know this song. It was at our wedding. Oh, Suge, but I don't know the actual name of the song.
What food you eat every week no matter what?
Cereal. Granola cereal.
Your favorite month?
December.
Work out or hit the couch?
Ooh, I can hit that corner of that couch, man, real quick. But I do work out, but I would hit that couch quick.
Matthew, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, why don't you share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and do business with you? And feel free to give all your social media handles.
Yeah, let's do it. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been a joy. I always say this at the end of every interview. It's refreshing to share your story. And the best way to get in touch with me is simply you can go to my personal website, which is www.matthewnewman.org. And Matthew is with 2 T's. Newman is Newman. So www.matthewnewman.org. My business specifically for this podcast is the Brand Pillars, which is www.thebrandpillars.com, exactly how it sounds. My social media handle is Instagram. I'm on all of the others, but I'll give you Instagram. You can find the others from there. Instagram is Mr_Catch-on-Fire. That's MR_Catch-on-Fire. Dr. Richards, I really thank you for having granting me the opportunity to be on the podcast today.
Thank you. That's a wrap.
Our guests have sent us so much swag, books, and giveaways this year. I can't wait to announce our monthly winner. So if you want exclusive content delivered right to your inbox and to enter into our monthly drawing, go to drfrancisrichards.com and subscribe to our mailing list. That's drfrancisrichards.com. drfrancisrichards.com. That's drfrancisrichards.com, and subscribe to our mailing list. We promise we will not spam you or sell your information.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.